I want my teenage daughter to come to me when she's facing a challenge or a problem.
Yes.
I want those open lines of communications to be there. You want the same for your employees.
Right.
I want the same for my speakers. I want the same for whatever I'm facing. And so as a leader, regardless of whether you're leading teenagers or whether you're leading employees, like I want people to come to me and say, look, this is a problem that I am facing. Let's face this thing together.
From the business capital of the world, the Big Apple, New York's Middle Tennessee, it says here.
It does.
Sounds riveting. This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals.
Yeah, mostly.
Mostly.
You know, with New Year's come new ways of doing things. I planned on actually switching up a couple of things in that intro, never got around to it, but one of these days we'll do it. Yes, this is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, and I'm going to kind of get into it casually a little bit because today we got another returning guests, and every new year it seems to be a tradition. This is the second annual, I guess you'd say, meeting of these minds, because I think it's a good way to kind of get yourself charged up for the new year. Two very positive thinking people with great ideas. We did this last year. The guest that I wanted to have on eventually just, she came in, she met my business partner, and I said, look, let's just turn the mics on. And we're all three back again. Welcome again, Amanda Banks. Say hello, Amanda.
Hello, Jim.
And my business partner, John Woerner.
Hello, Amanda.
Hello, Amanda.
Hello, John.
And, of course, on this podcast, we talk to Middle Tennessee business owners, professionals, entrepreneurs, about anything. They're meandering conversations where anything may come up. We talk mostly business, but it could be life. It could be, successes, challenges. And this year has been no exception because or rather 2024 has been no exception because it was a tough year. Was it not, John?
It was a tough year. Yeah.
You think? You're a man of few words right now. You can pull the mic to you. You don't.
So I can't. I don't have to like lean into it. Hello.
You're really leaning into it for some reason.
I really am, because it feels so weird to like not have it right in front of my face.
Then pull it towards you.
Yes, sir.
That's why we have mic arms.
Excellent.
Articulating mic arms.
I apologize to all the fans out there. I do not know how to use my microphone.
That's okay.
Well, and clearly we're very prepared for this conversation.
Absolutely.
So.
You know, this is the beauty of it. We just kind of go and.
We have several agenda items today. I don't know what any of them are, but we'll get to them.
We will get to them. It's, again, a meandering conversation. These are real conversations. You never know where they're going to go. They're generally about business, but we might end up talking about, I don't know, Robert Downey Jr. in a very regal outfit for some reason.
We might.
Yeah. I'm referring to referring to the picture that's actually right behind me. My daughter got that for me for Christmas.
Over there. I see it. Yeah.
And they framed it and everything. Wow. So I opened it up, and it's Robert Downey Jr.'s likeness in like a
Napoleon-esque
type of
painting thing.
Well, I must say, you guys have done quite the upgrade in this area. So the last two times was a different setup. This one is good. I'm digging the vibe here.
The frumpy couches. Everyone looked frumpy on them.
I did not like the couch.
This is not frumpy, and I feel like I need to sit a little bit straighter up now.
Now you're taller than me, so I got to sit up even more.
Which is not true in real life.
These chairs make it true.
So it's funny, here we are. Last year we did this, like I said, and think of all the, it was a challenging year, of course. But the cool thing that kind of came out of it was that you guys got to meet again because you knew each other, but really didn't know of each other.
Right.
Back in the day when you both did gymnastics. John, I guess you were coaching back then.
Amanda was as well, yes.
Amanda was as well.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And then you meet again, and John turns out to be a TEDx speaker for the first time in his life.
TEDx Old Hickory speaker.
TEDx Old Hickory.
That's right.
And I thought it was an incredible experience.
Yes.
I would love, because you were socially reluctant to do it.
Yes.
So I think it would be really important for people to hear your experience and kind of where you're at with it today. Because at the time, like, there was a little bit of us having to convince you to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious what your experience was.
So backstory from my point of view, we'll give it this way. So I, after this podcast last year, when Jim's like, hey, sit down, we're doing one. I'm like, I wasn't ready for this.
That's right. It's the best way to do it.
Wearing the wrong button-up shirt for the frumpy couches. And I was like, oh, whatever. I'll talk to this lady. I really didn't know who she was. We discovered really in that meeting that we knew each other from 20 years ago. And that was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was a worthwhile experience for me. To get to know her again, to have a chance to reconnect, as well as just the nature of where the conversation went was so encouraging and enlightening. And we got done with the podcast and we walked out of the room.
You kept on going.
And Amanda and I talked for another hour at least. And she really started to challenge me. I think the point she made was like, John, you've got all these great ideas. Why are you keeping them to yourself? Like, why aren't you putting yourself out there in places so these ideas can maybe impact somebody else's business or thought processes or how they live their life? And I'm like, because I'm not interested in anything like that. I'm happy with my little group of people that I manage in my business and the people I involve myself with in my family and the gymnastics that I coach. Like, that's enough for me. I don't want to be popular. I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be an influencer. And Amanda really pushed heavily and started pulling on the broken strings in my wool sweater I was wearing, and exposed the fact that I probably needed to step out and do more. And so her involvement with TEDx Old Hickory, she's like, hey, John, let's talk about this being your next step. And I'm like, yeah. I've never done a public presentation before. This is,
but you have,
but I haven't. Yeah. And so she ends up getting me signed up to do a Chamber of Commerce event here in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And I go in just talking 10 miles a minute, have a lot of things to say, a lot of filler words. I made it through it, got great feedback to the point where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm on board. Let's do this TEDx thing. And so fast forward several months, I had the opportunity right after I tore my ACL and had ACL surgery to get on stage in a massive cast-like thing on my leg and give a TEDx speech. And it was very surreal. That would be the best way I would describe it. I think the concept of imposter syndrome is very real. I was like, why am I the one on this stage? I'm literally following experts in their fields. The guy who announced me is a Harlem Globetrotter. Like, this is
super cool. Herb Lang.
Super.
So cool.
Awesome. I'd love to have him on.
Herb Lang was amazing. And I was so just like, wow, I'm in the middle of this and this isn't a dream. And so I made it through it. I feel like I delivered it well in terms of my style and what I was going for. I really harped in the session about my reluctancy to be on the stage and what it meant to me, what I was trying to portray in my pursuit of saying something. And it came down to if I keep all of this to myself, if I just work with my little family and my friends and my little company, what I'm eliminating is the legacy of the people who've invested in me. There have been some amazing people. In fact, one of them is a close friend of both Amanda's and mine, and he was our boss when we worked together. He invested a ton in me. And if I don't take this opportunity to invest in others through speaking and having the opportunity to share my thoughts and things I've learned in my life, then his legacy dies when I die.
Right.
And so it's kind of the take home is a more subtle, I would use the word non-positive engaging experiences, but it was really real and I wanted to be real. So afterwards, a lot of great feedback. The bigger questions. What were my goals? Did I want 1 million views? I don't have any idea how many views it's currently at. I have not looked at it in literally 2 months because that wasn't important to me. But I've had numerous messages via Facebook. I've had numerous messages via LinkedIn. Hey, I saw your thing and what you said really compelled me to think about this in a new way. A couple of people and I end up having lunches together. I was able to encourage them in their business. I've had some more opportunities to share things, but none of it in a public situation, all one-on-one, which is really what my goal would have been. If you would have said, hey, John, what's your goal of this? I'm sure there was a moment like, I want 1 million views.
Yeah.
But really, I just wanted to impact somebody. And the evidence is real that there have been numerous people, even as of 3 weeks ago, I had another person reach out to me on LinkedIn. Hey, I saw your video. I'm like, it's still getting watched.
Yeah.
It's still getting watched. And they listened and they had a lot of really good takeaways. And I was very excited about that. So it met all of my hopes and dreams that I had, maybe not your typical TEDx speaker has those same hopes and dreams, but for me, it was simply, I want to impact somebody, and I think I did. So that's my feedback on the whole experience.
You did a great job.
Very concise.
Yeah, you did a really great job. And that's the beautiful thing and why I love the TEDx Old Hickory platform, right? Is that it's all about ideas, and it's about providing opportunities to people to just take those ideas and be able to articulate those ideas in a clear and communicative way. And then for those ideas to take on a life of their own. So oftentimes people get really sucked into, especially on social media, like it needs to have 100,000 or 1 million views. It really doesn't. It can have a couple hundred views and really take on a life of its own, and it serves its purpose. It, one, allows you the journey of going through self-exploration, discovery. How do you build this thing in a beautiful, meaningful way? How do you communicate it? Like, it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. People don't realize how challenging, like for whatever reason, you step on that red circle and it just is terrifying. But you did it so beautifully. It was an incredible idea. So if you haven't seen the talk, head on over and definitely check it out, because you may be a social reluctant as well. But it's really beautiful. And that's the joy that I get as the organizer, is being able to walk people through a process, give people the opportunity, and for them to stand on that red circle with courage and be able to deliver their messages. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, there's an element of when you have that kind of thing going on, you have a lot of people. Yeah, I guess you have two different types of people that do it. You know, people that want that feather in their cap of being a TEDx speaker of some kind because they're pursuing a speaking career. John, in no shape or form, is pursuing a speaking career. It made me kind of think about the concept of planets and moons. You know, are you growing a planet that's got gravitational pull, where things are able to be nurtured? Hopefully, at least, okay, Earth. Other planets not so much. The moon is nice and pretty to look at sometimes, but it's not much there. On the planet down here where you got gravity. John, and I've always said this, and it's not anything physical that I'm, making fun of you for. You have gravity. I mean,
thank you for that disclaimer. I was going to be very concerned there. Much appreciated.
The concepts similar to a Gary Vaynerchuk, they attract people just by the concept, not by how you look or how much you're pushing the content out there. I'd prefer it to be organically discovered, instead of you going, oh my gosh, let me push it out there. Go and watch it. Here's the link. Make sure you watch it. Make sure you leave a comment. You did none of that. It's just being discovered organically, which I think I would prefer, because it's the stuff that falls out of your mouth that matters, not how you look, not how, the fact that you went up there and a cast even compliments it, in my opinion. It almost was too perfect. So,
well, I will tell you, ongoing hope of this whole thing. Would I do another public presentation? I would. I feel
you're great at them.
Convinced that I could develop a skill set around that and potentially, engage audiences in that way. Is it in my trajectory as a motivation? No.
Right. You're not trying to build a business out of it.
Counterpoint. No. I really look forward to the fact that 10 years from now that the TEDx, platform itself will still be viable. And I look forward to the fact that someone 10 years from now will say, hey, I don't know how I ran across your presentation, but I typed in this keyword and suddenly you popped up and I watched it. Wow. Can we talk? Like, that to me is like the coolest impact of all of this experience, is the fact that now that it's there, a month ago, I got a conversation. I had a lunch with somebody. It could happen in a week. It could happen in 10 years. It could happen in 30 years. The message I was able to communicate, the things from my heart that I felt I wanted to share about the reality I live in, it can impact people for a very long time in the future. That, generally speaking, me having meetings in my office with my staff, while it impacts their family immediately, there's not really a place for that to carry itself much beyond that moment. Right. And I like that. That's kind of a cool aspect of what the whole platform offers.
Here's the thing that you may be missing.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So that asset lives on, right? And so when you have the opportunity to do more of these things, which I'm confident you will, you have such a knack and a talent for this, you can go back and look at it and see your growth and development journey, which is something that, it's part of a process, right? And I think that you as a human being, you're always looking to serve other people, but it's also something for you to go back and be like, look, I did that thing. Look at where I'm at as far as the growth and trajectory that I've had. And as long as you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, I talk about this often, going back and having that as an asset to look at it is something to be really proud of.
A moment in time.
It's a moment in time.
Right. It's awesome.
And it's also a moment in time that your kids are going to be able to define. It's a legacy for you as well. That's something I also discovered this year. Was, I called them the 9 virtues of podcasting. I added a 10th, and that was legacy. Because, as you go through these hard times, I distinctly recall my father going through a hard time in 91. I was 15, 16 years old, and he was literally, and I've told this story before in the podcast, at his rope's end and sitting on the edge of their bed. Their bedroom was across from mine, so I could see in, and my mother was just sternly sitting there with her hands on her hips, like, where are we with all this? And it was a tough time. He was, in his early 50s, having to go back to being in a truck, getting up and down ladders, pulling wire. None of us could really help him. My brother was getting into college. I was still in high school. So he was there by himself after the roaring 80s, having to contract everything in his business down to just being him at 50 and trying just to keep our heads above water. I mean, the things he did were just, I look back on him going, oh my gosh, I wish I could talk to him. Because, we went through a similar, and are going through a similar situation now where, things are tight. It wasn't a very virtuous year. And, I just wished all that time, if I could just talk to him, dude, what were you thinking at that time? Because as he was sitting there in my, impressionable 15, 16-year-old brain, he said something to my mom. I'd never heard him crack. And his voice broke. He said, I need help. He was at his end. And I was like, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I knew at the time I would always remember that moment. And, I've been at that point in my life in this past year of like, okay, I don't know. We just got to keep on moving forward. At least we had each other, and we've got a really strong team here that it came down to, and I'll put it out there and hope you don't mind. Our business, it was making payroll all this year. Let's just make payroll. That's what we had to do. It's not fun for the owners because we're not making a paycheck. Yeah. We haven't taken a paycheck since April or May. April, I believe, right?
Yep.
So I'm okay with putting that out there because I think a lot of people, especially last year, they need to hear that vulnerability. And I talked about that a lot. I think it's been a year of vulnerability. And I believe one of the words that a lot of people go into a new year, well, this is my word. Let me look back at the year and say, what did I extract? What does this year mean? I think it was vulnerability and legacy. That's the 10th virtue of podcasting. My kids will always be able to go back and hopefully, as long as there's an internet and a YouTube, hear from me, either alive or dead.
Well, and I think that there's this notion, you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, was, people think that they need to do a TEDx talk, or they think that they need to go and do all of these different things. Like, the reality is like everything is available to you. It's just you having that courage and the ability to go out and do things. So maybe you can't book a TEDx talk, right? Like, although I'd love to have as many people as I possibly can, the reality is TEDx Old Hickory can only have a certain amount of speakers.
Right.
But you can do stuff like this. Like, you can go live, you can have conversations. And to your point, like, if I go back and look at some of the things that I shared years ago, like my personal growth and development journey around this, my ability to be more vulnerable or talk more authentically into my true nature, it's part of the process. And I think that entrepreneurship, especially creative entrepreneurship or things like media, it's the most brutal form of self-discovery that you can go through.
If you're willing to.
If you're willing to. But it's also a really beautiful experience. And, you learn communication skills and you learn, there's so many valuable things that you learn out of that. But to your point, like, life is hard. Tough conversations are had. And I think that that's where media is heading. Like, reality is important, and everybody has access or platforms in which they can share truth, and that's important.
Does your garage door sound like this? If it does, it's screaming for help. Call Incredible Doors, 931-348-DOOR. We're making garage doors in Murray and Williamson counties work better, sound better, and, well, spring better. We just make them incredible again. Incredible Doors in Spring Hill. When your door's springs break, you need remote reconnections. opener installation, or just about anything to do with your garage door, go to IncredibleDoors.com or call 931-348-DOOR. Follow us on Facebook for specials on maintenance visits, keypads, and other items. 931-348-DOOR.
I would agree.
I have a rant.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go. Buckle up, guys.
This is what we want.
No, it's not really rant, but it's something that I've been processing recently. This whole legacy conversation is one that needs to be had. A lot of people talk about, their current impact, how many followers, how many viewers, those kind of things. What are they doing right now to generate wealth for themselves, success for themselves, the feel goods, the attaboys, all of that's important to them. But legacy carries a much deeper weight. And most people aren't willing to really ponder the impact of their legacy when they can spend all their time thinking about their current events. And so the way I define legacy in my TED talk is it's the part of yourself that you imprint on the world you leave behind. And so the bigger question here is we talk about legacies for our families through social media, through going live, through podcasting, through TEDx talks, through those kind of things. It really comes down to the knowledge of, can I strengthen them or do I weaken them? You see, here's what happens. My children will have a hard time in their life. And if they see a dad who only ever portrayed himself as it's all together, I've got it all. I've got the big car, the big house. Look at me. Yeah. I can tell you all these wonderful things about business. I've got it all figured out. If this is what's being communicated out there to the world through these mediums, their children are going to grow up and say, well, my dad never struggled the way I struggled.
They're going to have inadequacy.
And now I am not as good as him. And it's going to defeat their ability to stand strong.
Right.
But if they can see not only my children, but the children of the families that I associate myself with, for me communicating through this podcast with people about the challenges in my life, I'm not communicating something that might make me feel good. But the legacy, the part of myself I imprint on the world is that even though it's been a tough year in 2024, even though I had an ACL surgery right before I had a TED Talk, even though my life is not the greatest with my heart attack, today is the 9th anniversary of my heart attack and my open heart surgery. And that is a big deal to me. It's a very emotional day for me.
Well, we're glad you're still here.
I am too.
Yeah.
But the bigger picture here is I want to imprint on the world the purpose of hurt leading to strength.
Right.
Not I've got it all together. And I think our youth are hungry for, the next generation is hungry for knowing that they're not inadequate compared to all of these big names, big pretty stars with all their cars and houses and things like that. They just want reality. And so for me, legacy is the thing that modern day social media influencers are not willing to think about, the impact of the way they're engaging the world on what it's going to do to the next generation watching them, their own children and those around them that view them 20 years from now, who are going to feel inadequate comparatively. Look, I want people to know that life sucks, but standing strong makes sense, and investing in people, even when you have nothing left to invest in yourself, is worth it.
Yeah.
That's what I want people to know.
So it's interesting. This word is really meaningful and impactful in a lot of different ways. But a couple of months ago, maybe even a year at this point, I was part of a dinner where a group of people flew in from all over the world, and we were just getting to know each other. It was like one of those networking dinners, and they were here for a totally alternative purpose. But I was part of that dinner, and that was the question: was legacy? Is what does legacy mean to you? And so these people were from all over the world. You had Columbia professors, and then you had somebody coming in from London. And what's really interesting is the word legacy means something vastly different to everybody. But what I realized is legacy carries a feeling associated to it. So it's not just about what the word means. It's how do you want people to feel when they talk about you or when they engage with your content, even we're talking kind of from a media perspective, or when they talk about the impact that you had with them, what's that feeling associated to it? So I've thought a lot about brand personal development and what is the feeling that I want people to have in which they engage with me. I want people to deeply know that I care.
Right.
And that I do a lot of work around ideas and communicating those ideas. I want people to know that their ideas are protected with me. Right. And so as a business owner, you've got your business brand and you've also got your personal brand associated to it because we're all humans.
Right. And
it's the question that I'm asking myself is, how do I want people to feel when they engage with me and my business? And that's a legacy thing for me. Is legacy carries not just the definition or the word. Legacy is very much the feeling associated to how you're engaging with somebody else and what you leave there.
You see, I guess I'm more of I don't really care how people feel.
You should.
We know.
No, you kind of get to the certain, it's like, dude, I care about what you think, not what you feel. And that's kind of been ingrained in me from one of my first mentors. He said that to me. I'm like, holy crap, and not to discredit what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying because people are going to feel that first impression. They're going to get, they're going to feel something. But, getting beyond that, to what you mentioned earlier, John, about, the people out there putting on the shiny, happy veneers or these, I've got the muscle shirt and the abs and all this other stuff. Think about what you're doing here, man. It's not, it's short-lived.
But to be fair, the thing that you reject to them is the feeling that's created.
Right.
So it is a feel thing for you. Again, my definition, which is not the best definition ever, but it's the one I happen to use, is the part of yourself that you imprint on the world you leave behind. Well, an imprint can be cognitive. It can be the words that were used. It can be the knowledge that was given. That can absolutely be an imprint, but it could also be the way you treated hardship, your strength, your character. It can also be the way you made people feel.
Right.
Man, every time somebody talked to my dad passed away a few years ago. The common theme after he passed away, when people come talk to me, man, I loved your dad. Well, what'd you love about him? Man, he hurt me in so many ways by telling me hard, true things, but I knew he loved me the entire time. I didn't want to hear what he had to say, but man, he loved me in ways that no other man ever had. Look, they didn't like his words because his words penetrated problems in their lives. They were convicting.
Yeah.
They were direct. They were unashamed. Counterpoint. They only heard the words because they felt loved. And so there's always a marriage and legacy between feeling and cognitive reality. The point is, if you don't think about the impact of your words and how you make people feel and how you engage them, your legacy is going to be broken by the opposite side of it. You might tell somebody you love them all the time, but you say hard things to them that isn't loving. Well, they're going to ignore all the feelings you're trying to give them because the words didn't match the feelings, vice versa. I can give a dictation on the best way to run a business, but it's never going to be heard if I don't share. I care about the success of the businesses I'm investing in. Boy, when they understand that I care and I'm telling them direct things, they're going to listen to me 10 times more clearly than they would listen if that other thing is missing. So I think both of you are accurate. Feeling matters in legacy. Yeah. Words matter in legacy. What matters in legacy is what part of yourself are you imprinting on the world you're leaving behind. That's my perspective. I like that.
You're kind of I guess I'm
referee.
You're almost like an even balance of both because you're very logical. You're very, you're not very emotionally reactive, about 10% of you.
Right.
I would say.
Right.
90% of you, you're just very logic. No, this doesn't add up. Which for, a person of faith is interesting because faith can be very emotional. And a lot of secular people, a lot of doubters would like to think that they apply logic to faith, but they don't meet too many people in the faith of a Christianity, for example. And I'm kind of going off on a tangent. That's what these conversations are. That can engage them in that way. Does that make sense?
Right. But again, to the logical dissidents against faith, and for the logical people that express faith, you're never going to convince them based upon logic that faith matters, because faith is the evidence of things you can't logic. That's literally what the Bible says about faith. And so it's about what is the emotional response I'm having to that person. Do they genuinely care about me? Is their communication with me about their faith one that is based in really caring for my well-being, or is it them trying to prove themselves right and me trying to prove them wrong? If we stick cognitive in the dissidents or in the believers, we never have any progression forward in relationship to each other. Mm-hmm. Because here's the truth. Proving myself right is not nearly important to my faith as the relationships that I'm able to carry alongside of me. Because proving myself right is not the point of our faith.
So this is a really interesting thing. So from a leadership perspective, right? So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions because to bring it back a year ago, I don't even know how long it's been, a year ago probably, we had a conversation similar to this about gymnastics and all of those things. But it was that conversation out in the hallway where I kind of pushed a little bit and was like, there's talent in you.
Totally.
In a way that you may not be tapping into. But me asking you to be a TEDx Old Hickory speaker, which is totally outside of your normal, if you didn't have faith in the process and you didn't trust me and Jim that we would create an atmosphere or an environment which was conducive to you being safe in that space,
right.
It would have never happened, right? Because you would have been like, absolutely not. And I think from a business owner perspective, carrying it back over to business and where faith and legacy and all these things play out is like, it's about the culture, it's about the experience, it's about identifying talent in people, and it's about positioning conversation in a way where people will buy into that and also have faith that they can deliver on those results, and they're in an environment that's conducive to producing in which they have expectations around. It's really powerful, and it's all played out in this entire experience.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things I love is the fact that you met her and she finally told you everything I've been telling you.
But she made me feel safe, Jim.
I needed to position it differently.
But that sometimes happens. It's a bias that husbands and wives have.
No, let's stick in the business track real quickly here because I think there's a point. You were going to ask me a couple of questions and you never did. So,
well, the question is like, if you didn't feel like I was going to protect your ideas and your experience and provide a platform for you, you would have never done it.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And there's zero chance of that. So this term culture.
Culture.
Legacy, culture.
Culture. That is such a buzzword in businesses today. They're like, oh, we are all about culture. It's part of their business visions now, and it's part of the business. 50 years ago, the concept of culture didn't exist in businesses. It wasn't something that they talked about. They were like, you might come from a different culture, but we have a company to run. Like that was their understanding of the term culture. Now all businesses seem to have this like heightened awareness that culture matters. And I love that. It does matter. Counterpoint. 3 businesses can do the exact same thing through their employees, have the exact same standards. One of them has exceptionally high turnover. One of them goes out of business and one of them is thriving. With all the same standards. I see the same standards show up on almost every culture conversation. Open acceptance of where you come from, common conversations, eliminating communication errors and issues, flat leadership structure where you have direct access to the leadership to engage them with I hear these things all the time. And here's the problem. 3 businesses can all do the same thing and have completely different results. The problem is the absence of leadership, not the absence of culture.
Right.
Because leadership understands. Effective leadership says, we are in this together and my success is dependent upon your success. And so what I have to communicate to you is I want you to be successful. That can't be something that is written on a piece of paper as a standard for culture.
It's got to be felt.
You have to have the feeling part. So to the point of legacy and sharing and engaging people, this culture word is becoming almost so bloated that it's losing value when it actually has a value. But the culture is not based upon a set of standards that you can write. It's based upon the leaders that you train and engage to care so deeply for their people that their people's success is more important than their own success. They feel safe working for you. You don't surprise them. There's clarity in their job expectations. We can go down the list of things at play, but even in those things, that safety is a feeling. It is not something you can write on paper and somehow teach 100 business leaders how to have a great culture by making your employees feel safe. Well, we have security cameras at every door. That doesn't portray safety. Safety comes with an emotional connection with the people that you're following and you're engaging with. That you cannot replicate with a standard of business.
Guess who's going to have all the clips from this podcast episode?
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It's
No.
okay. I totally sucked today.
You're
Wow,
good.
Jim. Wow. Give Amanda some kudos. She's doing a great job.
I'm including myself in that. You know? But isn't that crazy?
You never get clips.
But the funny thing is, I never do. They're usually dumb.
But this is the fun thing. This is reality. Yeah. Like if you're running a business, like there's no magic pill for this. Right. There's no magic formula. There's no follow XYZ process.
10 steps to a healthy culture. I've read that book. I'm like, dude, this is terrible.
But the thing is, you know how to synthesize information. Like as a leader, it's our responsibility to figure out, okay, like these are the principles that I can carry, that I seek as truth, that I can carry into my business, my reality.
Right.
There's no, you know, people are like, well, give me a process or sell me a book or sell me like a TED Talk. And I'm like, it has to truly come from you. It has to come from you. And that's the magic sauce of TEDx Old Hickory. Like I'm going back to TEDx because there's a similarity here, but we have 7 talks that will make the editor's pick. And that is like unheard of. It's uncommon for that to happen. And why is that? Is because right people, right idea, right vehicle of delivery.
Right.
And the beautiful thing, we all have ideas. So I want to inspire anybody. Like, we all have good ideas. We all have good leadership principles. The relationship is what matters. We have to find people that can help support us in our journey, that can help bring out the better, that can create a healthy culture for us, whether internally or externally. I mean, it all plays into this notion of relationships.
And it's so funny. So, Amanda, your turn.
You got some questions for me? I was really bad on the questions.
I have commentary.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing. In my business, I have direct reports. They work with me. Our turnover is exceptionally low because Jim has helped me, and we've created an incredible culture where people feel safe in their jobs. They understand their jobs, and they trust and appreciate the ability to come to us and work through whatever issues are going on. I love that. And how is that indicated? Well, that's indicated by the fact that most of my employees are 6+ year employees with us. We have almost no turnover in the business. And that's wonderful. It is so rewarding to know that we've done something well enough that they are going to, a generation that doesn't stick has stuck. It's awesome. You have to do this every single year. You don't get the opportunity of 6-year-long employees coming to your TEDx Old Hickory presentations where you guys have already built a culture. You're just working together to create a better experience. You have to press reset every year. But every year, it seems that what you bring to the table is the ability to create an extremely rewarding cultural experience. People are engaging each other in positive ways. They're supporting each other. Looking at the 2-year ago group, how they were all at the TEDx event this summer, and they were all like best friends sitting side by side and hugging each other. They have no reason to be together in life whatsoever. They come from completely different backgrounds. The group that we put together last year, that you were able to put together last year with the great successes on paper, the fact that we're all still celebrating each other and texting each other and having communications and emails, I have nothing similar to 95% of the people in that group. But you have in an instant created a culture that is long and sustainable. Any business would do well to put you in charge of their entire cultural operation out there. Like, you could be the chief cultural officer of a Fortune 5 company and probably completely transition their company because you've done it again and again and again. How do you do it? You have to answer that question, but you are world class at that.
Thanks.
Wow.
Yeah. Share your thoughts.
Wow. I will take that. I think it begins with you, right? Like, I had to personally do a lot of deep digging into what that meant to me. What did I want to create as a leader? How do I want to bring the right people together? You know, when we talk about the coaching industry, Jim, I know that you can probably go down on tangents with this. Like, there's these hard hitting in your face, like rah, rah, rah. And like,
coaches. That
can produce some type of energy or momentum. But like, I have a different nature to me. Like, it's the soft, it's the how do you as a leader, like, but that all came from me doing a ton of work, right, with myself and understanding, okay, to curate these spaces,
right,
it begins with me. And so, to your point, this may be the gymnastics background, this may be the perfectionist challenges, this may be a lot of different types of things, but I set myself and the expectations around myself at the highest of quality, regardless of what I'm doing. And if I'm setting expectations of the highest of quality, and what's important to me is things like excellent cultural, open conversations and communications and dialogue, people buying into this notion of community. That's another buzzword we talk about all the time, is community. Well, it has to start with an individual or somebody saying, this is how it's going to be and this is how we're going to behave. Right. And to your point, like, every year, especially with TEDx Old Hickory, with my business, it's totally different. But with TEDx Old Hickory, it's new people. And we're at the point now where TEDx Old Hickory is on the radar for, you know, we've seen really great results already. If I just brought people together and said, okay, we're just going to wing this thing, and you have a good idea and you have a good idea and you have a good idea, but didn't set the expectations of what I see the vision for,
right,
and clearly communicated that, and then gave that notion of safety and feeling and direction for everybody involved in it, it wouldn't happen. But it's not just me. I have a committee that's the same way. My mother is part of this. Like, family and curating spaces and community is important. So you talk about culture, like, it starts with leadership. It then starts with leadership disciplined around the idea and committed to that is how we're going to behave regardless of situation. And then constantly focusing on the curation associated to it. And it's not always easy.
right.
Like it's probably not easy for you to retain employees. You're probably having to constantly having conversations with, okay, well, this is how we can do things differently. And then you guys as leaders have to figure out, okay, like, what are my boundaries associated to this? How do I present a win-win solution? Mm-hmm. It's the same way. I can tell you that I have had the conversation about speakers quitting on me more than you could possibly imagine, but most of them follow through. Why? Because from a leadership perspective, it comes back to casting the vision, mm-hmm. providing a sense of safety and security, being able to pour in confidence. And that doesn't have to come from this raw, in your face, let's go get things done. You know, that works for some people. If I were to do that, like people would be like, what the hell is wrong with this lady? Like people would think I'm freaking
you're
crazy.
You're not authentic when you're being that way. You're authentic when you're caring for people. That is the deepest version of who, I mean, now you can be rah, and I've seen you be rah. Yeah. You're great at it, but you are authentically caring. You are.
I was a cheerleader and I had to quit because it was like, I couldn't, but you get what I'm saying? Right. Like, and that's the piece also is like, Jim, your leadership style and how you get people to buy into a vision, and John, your leadership style and how you get people to buy into a vision, and we're all vastly different. So if you're trying to follow a playbook, unless you start diving into the difficult questions of who are you, who do you want to be as a leader? What hard work do you need to do mm-hmm. to provide a safe, healthy cultural experience? Like the buck stops with you.
Right.
And if we all did that, imagine a place where organizations would have healthy leaders, not just from the executive team, but also from the management level, the entry-level management. We're all leaders.
The notion's got to be put out there. If you're listening to this.
By the way, she deserves a clip for that one.
Totally.
I'll take a clip for that one.
That was totally clippable.
Great, clippable.
There's so many people. I always go back to the car business. And, you know, any sort of same day, somewhat high pressure sailing environment. You're going to have people that enter that environment into a certain kind of culture. Typically in that business, it's going to be unhealthy. It's going to be high pressure. It's going to be hazing, that kind of a feel to it. And people come up and rise up through the ranks thinking, well, once I get to the desk, once I get into F&I and get into these managerial roles, I can then be that way. Instead of thinking to myself, no, I also have the power to break the chain, so to speak.
I'll give you a story with that. And this is a toot my own horse story, but it's a good story. I was given a retail store in Jackson, Tennessee, cell phone sales store. So second most intimidating environment for customers to walk into. The first is car dealership, second is cell phones. And the store had performed in the bottom 3% of the entire nation for almost 2 years. It was in a very dangerous part of town. Very low traffic in the area. And so obviously people don't go there and they didn't come in the store. It was a challenging place to be. And so I was given this store. And the very first thing I was told by my area manager was the thing that I will never, ever do. He said, all right, first thing you have to do is fire everybody, find good reasons. Cause you know, union employees, you got to find the right reasons, but your job is to track everything. We got to clear the whole ship. We're going to start with you. You're going to build your own team. You're going to have great success. And I said, okay, so with a union environment, it's going to take me 9 months really to terminate everybody. I can get a few out within 3 months if they do certain code of business conduct violations, things like that. But it'll be 9 months to clear the ship. And then hiring new people, getting them trained up. So we're talking a 2-year trajectory to getting the store to what you think I can make it. I don't have time for that because my compensation is based upon the store's performance. And I was really in need of compensation at that point in time. I said, no, I'm not going to fire anybody. Well, you'll be another manager comes in and spends 3 months and we're going to let you go and we'll find someone else who's willing to do this hard work. I'm like, no, we're going to change the story. Within 7 months, we were a top 5 in the country location. Our results were so overperforming expectations that I got taken to multiple large-scale business meetings. I got involved at the state level with Tennessee on how to do a better job of running things. A prior manager who had told me I'd never be good enough for leadership was assigned to me to learn how to run their store better. It was a phenomenal success. The moral of the story isn't how awesome I am. The moral of the story is when you change the narrative with your people, you can take the exact same people and make them exceptionally high performers, so much so that there was over 3,000 locations in this company in the country, and we're in the top 5. From bottom 3%, annually
in Jackson,
Tennessee, of all places.
But that's the thing, is you poured into each individual human being believing that they can be exceptional.
Right.
So like as the leader, you casted that vision of, look, guys, we're gals, girls, guys, whatever.
All of the above.
All of the above. Like, you are exceptional human beings. And this is the expectation set on how you're going to behave and what results we are going to deliver based on. And that's the piece. I've also been in very toxic corporate environments, working for organizations that didn't have the greatest culture. I learned that from outside resources and human beings that poured into me and said, look, Amanda, you're exceptional. But I had to have that knowledge. And as a leader, that's more critical than anything, is having that nature and that ability to pour into people so that they believe that they're exceptional. Because everybody is exceptional at something. I truly believe that. Like, everybody is exceptional at something. But how do you step in and live into your uniqueness and deliver exceptional results based on who you are as a human being?
10 years later, I'm looking back at that time. And to Amanda's point earlier, I think the thing that changed wasn't even casting the vision. Everybody cast a vision to come before them. That's the first thing you do as a manager. Get your team together, have a big team meeting, buy them breakfast, and we're all going to talk about how great we're going to be. Awesome.
Rah, rah.
Rah, rah. What changed is I began to show them that no matter what the corporate expectations were for selling this widget or this device, or you need to sell 32 of these and 10 of those, I didn't care about their results as much as their process. They were safe to know that I would act as an umbrella for them. Whereas every other manager coming before me was, your job's on the line, your job's on the line. If you want to save your job, you're going to get this done. You've got to get, no, I'm like, look, all I want from you is your best. How do we make it a little bit better? How do we make it a little bit better? I will take all the heat. And I took a ton of heat in the first 6 months. Why aren't you firing these people? They're still not meeting these metrics that we've got to sign for you. I'm like, these metrics are bad because they don't take the person into account. I took all that heat and never let it pass down beneath me. The umbrella term is the best thing. A couple of raindrops got through when they had to, but the vast majority, the team never saw. They didn't experience. And for me, that safe space was what changed for these exact same people, moving from worst of the worst to best of the best. It had to do with the fact that they knew that their leader would back them up and give them time to progress into the person that they could be, the excellence that they could portray. And so, yeah, I believe in excellence in everybody, but I also believe that a leader's job is to create a safe space for them to nourish a nature at their own rate of growth. You have 3 plants side by side. 2 are growing really fast. One's rolling really slow. Well, if you cut out the one that's growing really slow, you only have 2 plants left. Or you nurture the slow one at its pace, and over time, you'll end up with 3 producing plants. Which is better? 2 plants that produce quickly, or 3 producing plants? I will promise you every single time, if you're hungry, you wish you had that third one.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Where did this come from? Meaning, like, this is a mindset associated to leadership and a commitment to a behavior, right? Like, and I think that that's the thing that all 3 of us share, is like this commitment to excellence and culture and compassion and kindness towards other human beings and communicating about vulnerable moments. But like, where did that originate for you?
I would say, I can pick a lot of places where I experienced that, but the place it originated for me was men's gymnastics. I had a coach. I talked about in my TEDx speech for one line. He got one line. His name was Randy. And I was extremely slow performer in certain areas of my gymnastics, and extremely high performer in other areas of my gymnastics. And I was on a team of guys. I mean, we were state champions as a team. We were awesome. And I was the weakest link in a few of the areas and strongest link in others. And he never, ever compromise my ability to grow at my own pace. And all his words were encouraging me to continue to work. It wasn't, hey, I need these 3 skills by this time. It's, hey, just keep working. As a gymnast, I had a double full, which is a skill that's very complicated and very high level, before I had a standing tuck, which is a skill that 90% of cheerleaders can do.
That is odd.
It was really weird.
Yeah.
I could not land a standing tuck, but I had a double full. I had giants on the high bar before I could do a circle on the pommel horse. Those are completely different level skills. And the concept is, he allowed for me to feel completely inspired and healthy and safe. And what would be the better term? Able. I was able to be a great gymnast, even though there were areas that I was completely deficient. And he didn't spend all his time focusing on my deficiencies. He only spent his time focusing on my attitude and my perspective and how I felt. And look, I became a very high level gymnast, and I have been an exceptionally high performing coach since, because this man demonstrated me. I was 6 to 9 years old. It wasn't like I was a teenager going through these things. I was a young kid aware of the fact that I was deficient, and he helped me understand that I had value and that I could grow at my pace. And so, yeah, where did it come from? The investment of one man changed everything about my perspective.
It's crazy how that happens. For me, it was like, and the great thing that we can actually look back on in life are those moments where you're working or experiencing toxic situations. Going back to what I was saying before about the car business, the dealership itself was under really great leadership, the first one I worked for. I've actually had the guy on the podcast a couple of months ago named Steve Brink. You met him when he came in here. Tremendous GM, and he talked about exactly what you were talking about. Hellfire could be raining down in that office, but he would leave it with a big old smile on his face. You'd never know it. And he knew everybody's name. He would go and, right on to the porters, to the detailers, make sure they were checked in with, shake their hand, look them in the eye. They felt cared for, to your point. The guy who replaced him, it was the him show. It was all about him. And that's happened to me so many times in my career. In radio, my first mentor was a great mentor, but devout Christian man. Ended up going to Hartford from Danbury, Connecticut, where I met him. And he, still keep in contact with him today. The guy that replaced him he wasn't about him, but I think he had been beaten up by the business so much that he was just happy to get home. And I'm not going to rock the boat or do anything innovative. Let's just go back to the way things were always done. And at that point, I was checked out anyway. So I ended up going to Vegas, and I was hired by a guy who, again, I still talk to today. And then he was replaced by somebody who literally told us in a meeting, your job is to make me look good. And I was like, okay. And then I ended up moving to Nashville, and I worked for a tremendous company here in Nashville that was family owned and operated. I still talk to the people, didn't have that kind of management shift over or anything like that. I left the business in 2013, but you go through these experiences to learn how not to do things, and that's the choice you could make as an employee. It's like, look, if you don't like the way you were treated, you can change that. You can break that cycle. If you're in a situation where you can get to a managerial role, you can make that decision to not do the things that were done to you. The hazing, the high pressure, everything's going to be high pressure. But to your point, John, you said that could be accomplished in a myriad of ways. It doesn't have to be by threat,
right? By
fear, And that's what drives me nuts about some of the coaches out there. They teach other people to manage and run their businesses by threat and by fear. And it's like, guys, people are paying you for the coaching that's essentially shooting themselves in the foot. And it's just aggravating. And you put it great on some of the other episodes that we had last year. It's so unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's so unhealthy.
Well, and that's the thing. So I've been in environments where I had to behave a different way. Like as a female leader, like I had to shift to the culture in a certain way. So like there's a couple of questions that out of this entire conversation that I would ask is like, what type of leader do you want to be?
Right.
And that's not driven by title, right? Like my daughter's an incredible leader and she's 14.
Right.
Like what type of leader and human being do you want to be? What feeling or words or whatever do you want your legacy to carry on? And then to your point, like what can you do to create environments that pull out the best in you as a human being, whether that's internal to an organization. Mm-hmm. You can't control the outcome. You can only control the input, right? So if you can't control that organization or that culture, then like you can show up as a better leader and surround yourself externally with other people that are on that trajectory as well to become better, healthier, safer driven leaders.
And getting back to what I was saying, it's almost militaristic, some of these cultures that these people put forward. And it doesn't have to be. I was on a podcast once where we kind of didn't see eye to eye with the host about his attitudes towards a certain other influencer's way about going to create culture. And the way, I said, he's teaching companies how to have higher turnover. He says, well, sometimes it's needed. When I played baseball, that's how I said, well, that's the point, dude. I said, he's talking about militaristic approaches and culture shaping. The military, you can't leave. You know, you're in the military. You signed up for 4 years, you're in. You have to do it their way. And it's a way that they've done it to break you down and build you back up and fall in line and understand chain of command to the most Neanderthal ways, because it could be life or death, literally. I said, but dude, you're playing baseball. It isn't life or death. The thing that you chimed in, and the reason why they probably treated you that way, is because it's passion driven. And that's probably the next step where you can kind of channel that militaristic attitude in creating a culture, is because when you have a passion for doing something, man, you'll do it for free. You don't care how you're being treated. You know, baseball is fun. I'm here because I get to do this. Radio was fun. You know, I don't care how much you pay me as long as you keep on letting me in the building, you know? And the car business was like, guys, does this work for you? Because these people don't need to stick around. They can learn from you. You could pour into them. You could spend all the money training them up, showing them how to talk to a customer, how to close a deal, so on and so forth. But they'd be like, oh, I got this. I'm just going to find a healthier place at this point. And then you're back to square one. How is that healthy? So, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a heavy one.
It doesn't need to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Once again, it all comes back to the individual, in my opinion. Like, it all comes back to somebody saying, you know what? Because I grew up in a pretty toxic household. Gymnastics was not an easy sport. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons from that, right? But I had great coaches. I had great people in my life outside of the toxic household situation,
right.
Like a Ken Harris that
right.
was like so encouraging, so positive, saw talent. But it all came from me. Like, I had to deliver, and I had to learn, and I had to surround myself with the right people.
But did you put that pressure on yourself?
Always.
Yeah, because you were probably, it was just built in you to do that. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, nature or nurture. The question is, where did she get her identity from? And if everybody said, hey, your value is based on your performance, her natural instinct is going to be to adopt that mentality.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I understand we're high performers, but I think we're all high performers because somebody once told us, and we believed them, that our value was based on our performance, how well we could do. And we get the good boy attaboys. It felt really good to get that positive feedback when we did something really nice. Now, I don't know Amanda's story well enough to speak to that, but I do know a lot of your high performers out there come from the same root, which is somebody set an expectation in front of them, and they only got the cookie whenever they were able to perform at the level that person expected them to perform. And that changes their own self-perspective. Is it bad? It can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
But high performers often come from the same roots. So I can't say that expectations and attaboys are bad. I can say how you go about portraying them can be either destructive or constructive. And you have to choose how you engage high expectations with the attaboys. That comes down to that.
I got to say, your story earlier about, and I guess maybe I didn't know that. I knew you did shift that store, but your wherewithal and acknowledging the fact that you had to set the expectations for the people giving you the marching orders, that takes some chutzpah, man. I mean, especially you're in your early 30s, even turning 30, late 20s probably at the time. That takes a lot of moxie.
It was worse than that. I had 2 area managers over me that basically quit because of me.
Oh, wow.
Because they wanted to hold me to their standards of all these operations and me to fire my team. And I kept telling them no, but because my store had started to turn the direction, their boss said they couldn't fire me. So 2 people ended up leaving me as my bosses. And I ended up with a third boss who was, John, if you perform, I'm going to be completely hands off. If you underperform, my hands are completely on.
Stay off my radar.
Stay off my radar. Yeah. You've got this. My second best boss of that entire experience within that corporation was the guy that says, as long as you're performing, I don't care.
Yeah.
When you stop performing, I have to care. Dude, we had a great relationship for the next year and a half that I ran that store, but 2 other people couldn't handle the fact that I was standing against their quote unquote authority, not their leadership, but their authority, because they wanted to be in charge without leading me at all. And that is not something I can tolerate as an employee.
And there's good and bad to that.
I know,
right?
it's really dangerous.
But sometimes space is okay. Like, sometimes, especially with high performers, you got to give them a little bit of space to allow them to perform, right? Because like your way going about doing things and my way and Jim's way is going to be very different. but it's giving that space as long as there's trust within that relationship, right? To allow them to perform based on a lot of different types of factors. And we've talked about many of them at this point, but you've got to give people space sometimes too. And that's hard.
Yeah.
It's totally hard.
Like I'm having to learn that as a leader of like how
as a parent.
Oh, we can dive down that rabbit hole all day long. Yeah, we could dive down that rabbit hole. But like, you've got to give people a little bit of space to be able to perform, and you can't give them just this like a playbook is good, but how they execute based on that playbook is going to be totally different.
Well, there's two ways, and I'm gonna speak a little bit openly in this next little thing, because I think you make a really good point. As a leader of people, if somebody stands up and says, "I'm going to do it my way," there's two ways to take that. One way is you are standing against my leadership. You are affronting me. You're being insubordinate. Therefore, I have to get you to do it my way. That's one perspective of leadership, and it can be very emotional and very instant. Well, I don't want to do it that way. What? You don't want to do it my way? What is wrong with my way? I've got my way figured out. The other way to look at it is, okay, I've never seen your way before. Here's a shot. Run with it. But if this doesn't result the way you think it's going to result, you're going to do it my way next. I don't take that as an emotional negativity. I take that as an opportunity for me as a leader to learn something from the...
Totally.
Why would I surround myself with idiots? I want to surround myself with people that are smarter than me.
What
you
the heck am I doing
take your ego
here?
out.
Right.
That's ego, right?
Right. I want to have people smarter than me. So if somebody smarter than me has a different way of doing it than I have of doing it, then maybe I should shut up and listen to what they have to say and then watch the outcome. What happened last year, I ended up in a conversation last week with one of my employees who's been really standoffish for about 3 months. Has not come in the office much. They've been doing their work and getting it done every time, but they've just been very isolated from me. And so I sat them down after a meeting last week and said, what's going on? I made 2 comments back in August that were emotional. I had some customers that we were serving, and we had the opportunity to get the work done in 2 or 3 days. We were so financially tight that I told the guys just to take it easy and get it done in 3 days, because that extra day of billing would really help us to make sure we could pay for everything. And the customer expected a 3-day thing, and it was going to be fine. Well, what the employee heard was that I was sacrificing my integrity for money. I think that's a very valid response. And if I hadn't listened, if I just come in the room and said, you've got to fix everything and you've got to do those things, I would have been blind to the fact that I was operating in a way that I do not consider I should ever run a business. It was not integrous of me to make that comment, to even think that comment. If we can get it done in 2 days for the customer and save them $1,000, even if it means I'm short on payroll, I still have to, what did I sell my integrity for? $1,000 in somebody else's pocket? Like, this is not okay. And so I had the opportunity to either get very frustrated because an employee was being divergent and divisive in my mind, or just hear their heart. And their heart was actually tied towards, I wish you were a more integrous business leader in this scenario. And ever since then, I don't know how to look at you. I'm like, dude, thank you so much for that feedback. One, I'm sorry. I'm totally sorry for ever portraying that. And I was desperate. I didn't know how we were going to make payroll. And one more day in the field covered payroll. I should have never sacrificed the customer's expectations or my employees' expectations in the process of trying to make payroll. I was wrong. And look, here's the thing I had to tell him. I said, look, I'm a 41-year-old business owner, and our company has been a multi-million-dollar company. I promise you I will have 10 more mistakes that make you question my issue. Here's my problem with you, that you took 3.5 months to tell me that I hurt your feelings and that I said something that was not right for our company or for my integrity. I didn't even see it. Now I see it clearly. Man, come to me immediately next time. I need to know when I screw up, because I can't fix problems I don't see. And I was blind to that one. I should have never been that way, but I will make 10 more mistakes as a business leader. And look, that opportunity went from him on the verge of quitting and getting fired because of performance to I'm all in. Let's run for it. Let's do this. It has been a significant shift in his attitude and his mentality since that moment. I am thankful for humility that I was able to express in that point, because it changes his perspective of our company. And that's where I'm at. So
speaking of humility, we're so good at being transparent and vulnerable, aren't we?
Well, but that's the thing, is like, there's this notion that you're in a leadership role and you have all the answers. Like, we don't.
Right. That's
it could be as a parent.
And the thing is, dude, they know. The employees are going to know. If you're trying to fake it, they're going to see right through you and see you as an imposter. Because, and like, one of the things we keep on talking about, another buzzword in 2024, and probably even the years before, is the word in and of itself, leader. Everybody wants to be a leader. Sometimes you're just not. And you just got to accept the fact that you're probably not. Vaynerchuk, going back to him, he says, dude, if you're a number 3 or number 4 or number 5 at a company, okay, great. You know, I mean, it's like, you know, when we first started this company, John's like, his conditions, look, I need to be CEO. I said, dude, I want you to be. You know more about this stuff than I do. You've got better business acumen and strategy. I'm just here to learn. I am 6 years your senior, 7. Okay. I'm okay with that. And you have to have the, again, I guess that we're good at, we're going to humbly say this, we're good at humility. You know?
Well, it's interesting because you think of high performance teams, right? So you mentioned Herb Lang. I'm going to shout out Herb Lang on this, former Harlem Globetrotter, great friend. He was MC of TEDx Old Hickory this year. We're actually collaborating on a joint keynote and workshop this year about teamwork. So shameless plug. But what's really interesting is on a basketball team, and we'll talk about the Bulls, right? Like you had Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman and all of these incredible basketball players. Like
Scottie Pippen, you can't forget him. Yeah.
But Michael Jordan was considered
the GOAT,
right? So Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen, like if Michael Jordan was the only person playing on that court, he would have lost to every single team. You can't do this alone. There's so much value in being the Scottie Pippen or the Dennis Rodman in certain scenarios. And I think that that's the quality of a really good, if we want to use the word buzzword, leader. Like I know when to take the reins and say, okay, I'm going to lead this effort.
Right.
But I also know when somebody else is more capable and for me to support their efforts in whatever they're doing. And I think that that's where, you know, when it comes to leadership roles, like the ego, right? Like I just want to see the outcome successful. I want to see us win this game. And if it means that you need to be the leader in the specific, because you have a more skill set designed to drive the outcome, perfect.
Yeah.
Like we have to play as a team.
Yeah. One of the things that has really jumped out at me, and this is to your point, this imposter syndrome, who's better, who's the bigger leader. I was recently made aware that Zig Ziglar started his leadership development stuff in his 30s. John Maxwell started writing books on leadership in his 30s. I'm in my 40s. And I feel like they're the guys. Like they've always been 20 years ahead of me. And so, of course, I will never be that person because we have John Maxwell's and Zig Ziglar's out there expressing to the world of effective leadership. Counterpoint, I'm in my 40s. There aren't that many people out in front of me anymore compared to what it was when I was 20. When I was 20, 90% of the workforce was farther along than I am. But here I am in my 40s. And if I don't take the reins and begin to help the younger generation and the next generation of leaders understand leadership in a better and healthier way, then nobody is. It's on my shoulders now. And so for me, this was really changed. When my dad passed away, it really began to shift in my brain, like, who do I go to?
Right.
There's going to be a day when I'm the oldest, most senior person in my purview, and all I can do is feed down. There isn't somebody in front of me feeding me forward. And so I have to always look to those people now, but there's got to be recognition that I've got to begin to shift gears to becoming the expert and not feeling imposter about it. Instead of just having good ideas and letting experts in front of me communicate them out there. It shifts my perspective when I realize, hey, in my 40s, I'm going to become the more senior business leader that I engage, not the younger business leader that I've always been before.
That's profound.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never actually thought about it that way. It's, I kind of look to you in terms of your strategy and logic. There's certain times where I speak up and go, no, let's try it this way. And, I think what we're also very good at in this company, is the fact that, for example, we have an employee that always wanted to be in the Christmas parade. And, last year brought it up to us. And it's like, at the time we had like, well, we doesn't really know. It doesn't make sense for us to be in it. We're going to build a float of lights, and have
that
a pod.
Sounds kind of cool.
It is, but
float of light.
What's you got to go into it with an expectation of, okay, what's the return other than just overall branding? being that we're commercially driven, to the car wash market, that kind of thing.
And we're a national product, and there's very few local customers, like 3 maybe.
You could sell lights to every single one of those.
There are a lot of workarounds, absolutely.
Oh.
And I kind of had to gently, explain to the person. I said, "Listen, I appreciate your thoughts. I completely agree with you, but there's really, for us to put this much effort into it and all the, the man hours and the materials and all this stuff. This year we had something that was locally based. It's our garage door company called Incredible Doors, incredibledoors.com, 931.
You should start that with shameless tag, like she did.
That's right.
And then you go shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
So shameless plug, Incredible Doors.
Incredible Doors.
They're incredible.
They are incredible. Why are they incredible, John? This is a lie.
Because we have an incredible team.
Incredible team. That's right. Incredible. We have an incredible leader in that space that's helping us out, Mr. Bill. Yes. So we have with that kind of that all of a sudden it made sense. But I heard a podcast from the Wizard of Ads himself years ago, Roy H. Williams. He wrote the trilogy of books, The Wizard of Ads. He's got the Wizard Academy down in Austin. Dude, we need to go there someday. It's beautiful.
Do I get a wand?
We can probably get a wand.
Sweet.
He has a winery on campus, so as well. But the sunsets there in the spring are spectacular. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so he actually had a podcast where he'll get employees that come up to him and say, hey, we should do this and this and this. And he's like, I've kind of adapted the attitude over the years. That sounds great. You're in charge.
Yeah.
And he says, right then, their conviction. And to her credit, she ran with it, and we were in the two Christmas parades this year.
Yeah,
because I literally said, you know what? I like it. It makes sense. You're in charge. Right?
There's a really powerful question here is like, what can we do to make this happen together?
Right.
Like if somebody is motivated to do something, but if there's somebody motivated to make something happen,
yeah.
Right? Like, okay, well, what are we going to do to make this happen together? And like, if you're willing to lead that effort, then make it make sense to me. Like, I'm happy to support that desire, but what do we have to do to make this happen?
It's empowering us. Just those 3 small words. You're in charge. Great. Let's do this.
Well, I think obviously to Amanda's point, the nature of working together with someone who you're asking permission gives you a sense of value that, he hands off. He doesn't want anything to do with it. Right. Doesn't give. And so I think how you phrase that can impact the perspective based upon the employee. Like this specific employee, I could have said, you're in charge. She'd be like, great.
And she did.
Because she knows that we love her well outside of this specific event. But if you are a leader, and we're offering counsels to leaders through this, mostly Middle Tennessee business podcast.
It's right there on the TV.
There we go. The mostly Middle Tennessee. I got it right.
It's probably cut off by my head.
It's good. Your head is big, but not that big.
Wow.
But here's the thing. So how you word that, practically speaking, not knowing the relationships between business leaders and employees, how can we do this together is such a great mindset of, hey, I'm on board, but I'm not doing the work.
Right.
I'm here beside you. We're going to go through this hand in hand. You can be part of the senior team because you're working beside the leadership.
We're going to give you
on
the
this
title,
process. Look,
here's the pay.
Here's the thing. It's just a great opportunity to help somebody feel like they are important to the direction of the company, not just they get to go play in their own little sandbox. And so I love the fact you pushed back on that. And I also totally agree with the notion of, you give them ownership in the things they have heart for. I have an employee who has great heart for a lot of things. And I've continued to tell him like, you want to run with it. I'll support you in it. And it never happens. And this is like 5 times now he's come to me like, hey, I have this great idea. We can make some more money if we just do this. Awesome. Do some research, build me a business plan for it. And if the money's there, let's run with it. He has yet to bring back a business plan. And so I know his conviction, while the opportunity speaks to him, the conviction in the direction does not. The minute he brings me a business plan, because he's given me like so many times of proving he's not interested, I'm probably going to jump on whatever it is because it proves that he's finally found that one direction that he is most excited to go. We'll see. I don't know yet.
I'm trying to think of who you're talking about.
You don't have to. It's not for the podcast.
I know. But I wasn't going to bring that up. I'm just like, I think I know. So
it's you, Jim. It's you. I'm just kidding.
Looking back over the year, what was like profoundly impactful to you, Amanda?
Last year?
Yeah.
Or this year so far?
Because we have so many different buzzwords we've talked about in this podcast.
I know.
And it's like leading the year, you always want, well, this year I'm going to own the word this. Like I said earlier, I think it's more of a retrospective thing. What did you learn? Because you went into last year thinking you would do one thing, and I think it was authentic influence, but it turned into another. correct?
It's still the same thing. So I'm still helping individuals in business build authentic influence. But I think that, I've served as a generalist for a long time. I think high performers, like, put us in a role and we can do just about anything. Like, honestly, like if you teach us the skill sets and the expectations and requirements, and we know that we can deliver in those things. I can't build things. That's the one thing I can't do.
Amen.
Yeah, I can't build anything. But the thing that I learned is that there's a lot of value in specialization, meaning being very clear, laser focused on the services that you can deliver. And I also think that as an entrepreneur and a creative entrepreneur at that, it's a journey. So like, it's not that I completely diverted direction. It was identify focus. So this year, that's one big thing I learned last year is it's okay to be a generalist for a long time, but at some point you got to specialize and figure out how to communicate that value in what you're going to do. And for me, what's really profound is I live in events, education, and experiences. So like I have this knack of helping individuals buy into feeling, a process, a thought, and then creating ecosystems and spaces of exchange, ideas, exchange, even revenue. Like there's all sorts of different types of ways that this plays out. So that was a big lesson for me is branding wise, right? Words matter, like the way that you communicate. However, specialization is also very important. So I've kind of leaned into an area of specialty.
Well, there's definitely something to that. Whenever you do focus on something, it becomes more powerful.
Yep.
Infinitely. John, what about you? What have you learned? You had time to think about this.
I know I did. 2024 was a very humbling year. I learned a lot of things because when you're in a position of humility, you learn a whole lot better.
But dude, you saw it coming.
I did. I was able to help Jim and my other partners see that 2024 is going to be a hard year, and we were in front of it conceptually, but it doesn't change the hardship of it.
Yeah.
Somebody has cancer. We know it's a hard road in front of us. The knowledge that it's going to be hard and the process of walking through it are two very different things. And that's where we were at last year. So humbling would be the biggest category of impact. I appreciate the ability to be humbled. It takes a lot. I'm very strong-willed, very strong-minded, very confident, and humility is a wonderful, wonderful thing for me. I grow so much. But the biggest takeaway from last year would be this transitional space that I've already talked about a couple times today, but practically looking at transitioning myself out of everything for the company into something for the company. As an example, most of my employees have been here with me for 6+ years. They know how I expect to lead. They know my expectations and performance. They know showing up, getting the work done is most important to me, how timelines work in my space. But I've always held them as an employee level. So this last year, we launched the Incredible Doors product, and I gave one of my employees the authority to run the entire division of the business. Our car wash lighting product is a project I'm working through this year to hand off the entirety of my car wash lighting to one of my employees because they get to become a director level role in that. That frees me from having to have my hands in every pot to only having my hands in developing the leaders who have complete autonomy over their divisions. And it's going to be a transition for me because I've always had my hands in everything as a company owner. But for me, the biggest thing is I am not leaving a legacy if I limit them to only doing what they've always done and never allow them to step into the next level of business leadership, which is owning their own part of our company and me just playing support. It's growing up through teenage years. You go from being everything for your kids to counselor to your kids. Hey, these are some good decisions, to cheerleader. Hey, go get it. And so in that transition, I feel my world has shifted too.
Can we talk about teenagers?
But how many business owners don't, like, you knew you would have to hand things off. A lot of business owners, that really makes them squirm.
Conceptually,
right?
But practically, I've never been able to do it well. This year has forced me to do it well.
I don't think you've really had the chance.
It's fair, but even in that. So teenagers, you wanted to talk about them.
Well, no, I just think that like there's so many humbling lessons as a parent when you're parenting teenagers.
Yep.
A 14-year-old. So we're going from middle school to high school and all of the parenting lessons, and that humbles you.
But here's the thing. You've raised the child to this point. They know your expectations. And so if you spend the next 6 years only harping in the same expectations, you're going to keep them in the exact same position. We're not called to raise great kids. Our job as parents is raising great adults. And so that shift is required in parenting as you go through their teenage years where they know the expectations. If they're choosing not to go through their expectations, they know that that's going on. But if I allow for them to deal with the consequences of the rejection of my standards and then stand beside them and help them back to their feet and let's walk forward another few steps, falling on their own face is the hardest thing for parents to allow for their kids to do at this stage. Is like, yeah, you told this boy you liked him and he hurt you badly. I kind of warned you not to get in that conversation, but you did it anyways. And now you're hurting. I can't dismiss the hurt because I told you so. I have to change and pick them up and walk beside them and help them to understand that their rejection of the principles that we had placed for them are the reason they're in the situation. When I have business leaders in the same mantra, I'm going to have to treat them as, okay, I gave you this company. It's yours now. Oh, you fell on your face and the performance wasn't there. That's fine. I can either fire you and lose years of investment in you, or let's stand up. Let's get at this again. Let's walk together. Now, where did you go wrong? I have to be ready to let any of the divisions of the company that I hand off fail. I have to. I can't go at it expecting the huge success they've always seen and then constantly being disappointed because I have a new leader who's growing in ways that I never let them grow before. See, I haven't let them have ownership of these parts of the business. I have to stop and pause and say, yeah, I get it. It's hard. I didn't start there. We are going to figure this out together.
But here's an interesting correlation. So I want my teenage daughter to come to me when she's facing a challenge or a problem.
Yes.
I want those open lines of communications to be there. You want the same for your employees.
Right.
I want the same for my speakers. I want the same for whatever I'm facing. And so as a leader, regardless of whether you're leading teenagers or whether you're leading employees, like I want people to come to me and say, look, this is a problem that I am facing. Let's face this thing together.
What is the only time they'll ever come to you?
When they need money.
When they feel safe.
Exactly.
You're not going to shut them down and use I told you so every time. The more times you use those phrases with a business or with a teenager, the less they'll ever feel safe coming to you. It's all about changing your role.
So this was a good lesson for 2024 then, for me, right? We're taking pictures and doing all sorts of fun stuff.
Hello.
I'm letting you guys talk while I do the social media thing.
Gotcha.
Oh.
Yeah.
2024 was a
Action
good
shots.
lesson of that, is learning like how to allow yourself to listen to people that bring challenges to you and not make crazy judgments.
I'm going to predict the next big buzzword that's going to lose power: empathy. Because that's kind of what you're describing. Because authenticity has lost its power. You know, the word leadership has lost its power.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think they all have great power.
They do, but
I think they've lost their definition. If I can clearly define empathy, if I can clearly define leadership, if I can clearly define authenticity, the word still carries much power. What happens is when you wash it out with all of these different perspectives on what it means, which aren't dictionary definitions, but instead perceived expectations tied to them, that's what loses power. And so I think what you do is you can shell off all of the other variants of what leadership or authenticity or empathy look like into the root meaning of the word, which for me was influencer last year. I talked in my speech about, hey, influencer has lost its meaning. We now mean a lot of different things when we say that person's an influencer. The original meaning of influencer is somebody that impacts change. It's the measure of how much change was impacted that determines their influence, not how famous they are. See, here's the thing. Those words have not lost power. They've gotten diluted to the point where people don't know when the real one shows up, because it all just looks like a glass of water. And that's the thing, is poison can exist in a glass of water and you'll never taste it. But if you just took pure poison, you would immediately know what it was. As we dilute things, they lose their power. And we have to make sure if we're going to use words like authenticity or empathy or leadership or development or culture, that they stick with the original intended motivation of what that word means and that we only use it in the right way.
And this is the importance of the vehicle,
That's
right? Like you have to find people in which you trust them to deliver these words with safety.
My goodness.
All right. What other questions you got, Jim?
I'm running out of questions. We're going on an hour and 22 minutes of this.
Holy cow.
I know, right? This is what I mean. I always look for, well, I just say always. This is the second time we did this, but I was looking forward to this particular conversation because it's always a good one. So thank you guys for being a part of it.
I agree, Amanda. You are an excellent facilitator of great conversations. We got this old man beside us who's struggling, but you're doing a great job.
I try.
You guys are both fabulous. And that's the thing about relationships. Like, well, maybe we'll end it here. Relationships. Like,
we're going to end relationships here?
No.
No, don't say that.
Most people would. but we don't. I mean, it's been such an honor and a privilege of mine to watch both of you guys grow. Like, we've known each other. Jim and I have known each other, for like 2 or 3 years now?
Yeah, about that.
John and I...
It's complicated.
It's complicated. But that's the beauty of building really meaningful relationships, having these types of conversations, is you get to watch the progression of where people are at. That's something I find very beautiful, is watching. And even going back to our initial episode, I probably will and say, okay, like, this is the surface level conversation and this is where we're at now. And it's beautiful to watch that, whether it's with speakers, friends, employees, it's the relationship. And most people talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. It takes work. Jim, how many times are you and I on the phone?
You're listening to me. I don't know. I kind of like, not trauma dump, but you get me on these tangents where I'm just like, I don't know. My thing last year was just getting frustrated with these, again, so-called influencers that are like just full of bad information and just full of themselves. And it drives me, probably on the surface, it probably drives me crazy perceptually, but really internally, not so much. It's, I guess it's a bit, but.
But it takes conversation.
It does.
Right? Like, it takes effort. It takes the consistent follow through and follow up. Mm-hmm. But look at what happens if you just stay in the conversation for years.
And it's, hopefully those things kind of keep nurturing. But, as life gets busier and busier, what I've found, if I had to look back on my year and.
Oh, yeah. Jim.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell us about your 2024.
What did I extract out of 2024? How to channel peace and still have hope. And it's like, not what we went through in 2022 was stressful, but I never felt it because I always felt hope. I always felt like it was the right thing. We had to go through it. It was a gauntlet of some sort. But at the same time, it was like I just never felt like stressed out about it. And maybe that's because of how many times I've been around the block in life. And same thing for this year. It's like, I never felt like, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive this? It was just, sometimes you just got to have faith and hope, and things are just going to happen.
I think you two should have a podcast where you talk about last year, some of the challenges.
Kind of just did.
Well, and then talk about this year and what hope you have for this year. Because I think that's really powerful for people to understand, right? Business partnership and relationships are hard.
The 16th day into January. And for a lot of people, they can look back at the 16 days and think this whole year has been a crap show already. You've got the wildfires in LA. You've got, the Vegas bombing. You had the New Orleans thing. You've got, my wife has been injured, so she's getting through that now. I'm dealing stuff with my mother. It's been a lot in 16 days, but I still have the same kind of attitude of like, I feel like it's just going to be, I hope I'm right. And I hope I'm not jinxing myself. I think John and I are aligned in this thought. I think it's going to be a good year. We had our meeting last week and we talked a lot about that.
Yeah. I will say, us doing a podcast, sure. That's one more I have to be on. This one is always a pleasure for me, so I have zero issue with this one. He's like, Amanda. I was like, yeah. Usually I'm like, I have to be on another podcast. Dang it. Here's the thing. Most business owners after a year like last year, when they're not taking a payroll for the vast majority of the year, their business is barely like pennies in the bank when they're trying to make sure their employees are paid. We went every paycheck and never missed a paycheck for our employees, but that took immense amounts of effort on Jim and my shoulders to make it happen. Even sometimes putting in our own money to make payroll that we didn't have because we hadn't taken a paycheck. This is what we went through. And business owners, small business owners, anybody you talk to who has run a small business for a season says, yeah, that's normal. It's just part of the process. I mean, nobody feels offended by this. That's why I'm not afraid to speak to it. But I will tell you, most business owners coming out of that are not looking at like, how do I divest my business and bring directors into play and restructure ourselves in a way that makes us more nimble in the future. Like we're building a set of SOPs that are unique to new things that we're doing. Most of them are just literally like so exhausted and frustrated and stressed out that they're not going to invest in the future of their business. One thing that I say we are doing well as a company and as leaders is not letting the trajectory define the destination. We have to say, even though our trajectory has been south, our destination is still to take this to a multi-million-dollar, successful, stable company where we can have 30 or 40 employees that we get to invest in their well-being and their families. We want to continue to drive in that direction. And so no matter the trajectory that we feel we've taken, our destination has not changed. It's up. And we're going to build our business like a $10 million business every single day that we're at work. And we're not going to let circumstances dictate our goal. That changes everything.
So I know self-promotion can be a really nasty word for people. And I don't know how often you do this, Jim. I'm going to hijack your podcast real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
For people that are tuning into this, I want both of you guys to share what are good target clients for you and who are the people that you can show up and serve. And I want it coming from both of you guys because once again, you shameless plug people all the time.
I don't do enough of myself.
But I think that this is a great platform and a safe ecosystem in which you both need to share because the reality is like revenue comes from connections and comes from solving problems.
Right. People whose money is green. Is that good?
No.
Or Bitcoiners?
No. Answer honestly, Jim. She asked an honest question.
For me, it's, and this is kind of like B&I has helped me hone this message. Lindsay Stafford as well. You need to connect with her. I think I did connect you guys when you got to just kind of get it all together and be on her podcast at some point. But
that will be wildfires. What that will be.
That would be great. Yeah, they're both type A's.
Incredible thinkers.
Yes. So for me, it's people that just are having their legacy in mind, or companies that want to develop their culture. And maybe they're too large. For example, the automotive group I work with, I always say this, and if Joe ever listens, I'm talking to you. It's tough to really get FaceTime with 1,200 plus employees, but you can do that through a podcast. You know, Vaynerchuk understands the notion that his reputation and his social media presence precedes him. And I think he creates his culture and attracts the people that are right for his culture by virtue of his social media presence, because he's constantly putting it out there. And he's gonna refine his culture and build on it, even though he probably won't. He's got, I think, 2,000 employees now. That's a tough nut, unless you're in a giant auditorium to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes with every employee. That's going to take a bit, And I know Joe Agresti wants to do that and I commend you on that. But dude, let's think realistically. It's a tough nut to crack. So maybe I think a podcast is good in that scenario. And for any company that's like that size, I think I'd love to talk to them for podcasting.
What about you, John?
So the funny thing is even though Jim and I are business partners, we run our business in the areas that we are gifted. And so Jim's exceptionally gifted at podcasts and developing and people and things like that. And so that's what he markets as our business. And I love it because it's revenue generating, one, but two, it's really his gifting. And why would I ask him to be something he's not to somehow move our company forward? That doesn't make any sense at all. For me, the right customers are people who have access to the end users. I have been so long beating my head against the wall of I have to sell direct. And I just am not that person to be able to effectively bring 10,000 leads into our business and then measure which ones are viable leads and then spend the time I'm not good at that. And so for me, it's the architects out there, the builders out there, the car wash companies that we do a lot of car wash lighting. It's the people who own, garage doors. But more importantly, like your businesses like Amazon that has like 100 doors per building and they have 30 buildings in the area, like those kinds of relationships where I can maintain the relationship, but they're the ones who are actually bringing us the business is what I'm looking for. So for the architects out there and the graphic designers and things like that, not graphic designers, the business building designers, what do you call that?
Building design.
Building designers.
Architects.
Yeah. But also people that make them look pretty.
That's right.
Whatever those people are. I would love
design builders.
Design builders. There you go. See, I knew there was a word. Yeah. I fail miserably at this plug. By the way, plugging is not my strength. I would love to develop relationships. We are a local company. We are very quick to respond. We have incredible quality products. We meet all of the DLC premium UL listing, all that kind of stuff that we need to have in order to go. I just don't know where to start finding those relationships. And so for me, it's, can you begin to include my fixtures in your designs, both colored and standard lighting? that allows for us to develop great long-term relationships, and we are just part of the solutions you provide. That's what I want.
Nice. That's good.
So there you have it, folks. If
What
you're
about you?
tuning in.
What about you, Amanda?
So I would say individuals that and organizations that want to launch speaker series, that are hosting events, that need conversations or relationships or communities fostered like this are really good conversations for me to have. I will say I'm the first one to say whether or not you're a good client or not a good client of mine. And I'm always a great catalyst to help connect people into other good quality businesses and relationships that can support their efforts. So I would just say if you're hosting events, if you want to host events, if you want to launch speaker series, if you need a speaker, don't hesitate to reach out in any way, for sure.
There you go.
Well played.
I will actually circle back around to the concept we were talking about before about vulnerability, authenticity. I believe we as a company are very good at that. It takes a lot of courage to admit some of the things that we admit on a public, semi-public forum. And I want to add that we're probably addressing people in the audience that are probably relishing the fact that we've had difficulties. So we acknowledge that. We know you're out there. And we know that you're, ooh, really? They haven't taken a paycheck? They must be really hurting.
I don't care.
I know we don't care.
Right.
And that's part of it. And for anybody who's listening, that you have to consider that as well, that there are people out there probably championing your demise. Who cares?
Yeah.
Keep on doing you.
That's the social piece.
Yeah.
Social media is great for this. People are going to like what you do. They're going to dislike what you do, or they're going to follow what you do.
Right.
How do people find and follow you, Amanda?
The best place is LinkedIn or my personal branded website, amanda-banks.com.
Everything's right there, so they can go to amanda-banks.com.
They can go
all
there.
Your socials, all your fun stuff.
All
You're doing Instagram now, right? Reluctantly.
So that's closed. So Instagram
Still,
and
I thought
Facebook
it was open again.
There, so
Amanda shares joy.
So that's closed. The reason it's open for you is because we're connected.
Right.
There's too many creepers.
Yeah.
So I found that LinkedIn is a really incredible professional
That's
network.
why she doesn't let me on there.
There's creepers on LinkedIn, I'm sure.
Yes.
They call them simps.
But it's limited. It's the way that they approach is a little bit easier to manage. So yes, Facebook and Instagram is still closed, but LinkedIn is open.
Well, there you go. Amanda-banks.com. All the information, of course, will be in the description. And if you want to find and follow us, or you've already found us if you've gotten this far, MMTBP.com. Open for sponsorships as well as guest suggestions. Would love it if you're actually from the area, Middle Tennessee. It's the topic of this business. We do have other people that are from outside the area, but I typically go after them, and it's kind of a self-serving thing because I think they're interesting and I want to talk to them. So occasionally we go outside that purview. But again, MMTBP, this has been the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast. Great time with you, Amanda and John. Thanks for being on.
You too, my friends.